Hello and welcome to the podcast, The Way of the Sensitive. I'm your host, Cara Wilde. This is a podcast for those of us who feel called to live in a different way, to create a new society where diversity and uniqueness is celebrated, not shamed. We're the channels of the light, co-creating a heaven on earth upon this beautiful planet. We're here to live and achieve our soul's goals in this lifetime. To us, it's not woo, it's real. Calling all the magic makers, the mystics, the empaths, the sensitives, the starseeds, the artistic, autistic ones, sometimes sidelined, sometimes scapegoated, but we know that we're here to create new pathways in the one mind, because it's not just about traversing alternative dimensions, it's also about landing and being fully alive in this gorgeous world. Sensitive Podcast. Today I'm talking to Or Shahra, and Or is a yoga teacher who trains yoga practitioners who want their practice to become more regular and more meaningful, and they feel like their weekly class is not enough anymore to deepen their practice, and they want to be able to deepen their practice without spending tons of time and money on yoga teacher training. And on this call, Or shares her personal journey of experiencing depression in her 20s, of feeling like she didn't belong, and how traveling to India and other countries helped her to find herself and to find out how to belong on her own terms. And I loved how she described being a sensitive, and the way that she sees it is being a sensitive is like a tool of how to exist here in reality. I mean, isn't that just gorgeous? It's like, it's a way, it's something that we can utilize to help a more nourishing experience of life. So we talk about her journey and her journey with depression and feeling like she'd lost herself and didn't know who she was, and also about how she built a simple spiritual practice that became her core stability in putting herself back together. And we also talk about how developing a spiritual practice feels like this massive, huge thing. And actually, it's a really simple thing that you can start doing straight away, and that the overriding principle of a spiritual practice is about consistency rather than doing the right thing. And Or touches on her frustrations of some of the more westernized practices of yoga that can neglect to include this kind of what she described as like a moral code, a way of being, which I interpret as having integrity and being connected to yourself at the core. So we talk about how, when you go to yoga class, you don't really know what you're doing to build up a practice necessarily. You just do the moves, but you don't know why you're doing them. And how having a yoga practice without a spiritual practice and a sense of being connected to that inner core can lead to just a shallow experience of yoga. So lots of juicy ideas, lots of information. Enjoy it and see you in the Facebook group. Hello everybody, and welcome to show 3 of The Way of the Sensitive. And today we have, as I've already mentioned, Or. Hi Or, thanks for joining us.
Hi, hello.
Thanks for coming on the show. So the thing that I always start off with when I'm interviewing people is, do you consider yourself kind of like a sensitive, or some kind of like, the word I use is misfit, so just don't quite fit into norm? And so, do you associate with that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I had a lot of titles put on me in my life. I also suffered from mental illness. So everybody that suffered from that know that, different people put different kind of categories on you.
Yeah.
One of them was really like highly sensitive person.
Yeah.
Which I kind of very much connected to, unlike other kind of definitions. But I don't know, I don't kind of wake up in the morning and think, I'm highly sensitive. I try not to get too attached to kind of like, definitions and things like that. It's like something that I use to when things sometimes gets hard. So I say like, okay, maybe it's because I am like that and not like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I use it more as a tool and less as a definition, I guess.
That's a
And
really good way of looking at it, as a tool rather than a definition. I like that. Yeah.
yeah, because I think definitions are very limiting
Mm-hmm.
and they can very fast lead to, yeah, like kind of attachment to something, like hanging on it. And I try to avoid it generally speaking in my life. And especially, yeah, when it comes to kind of like mental health definitions and things like that, that anyway, at least right now have very little to do with my daily life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also used the word misfit. I also read it on your website and I was thinking like, yeah, that's an interesting word because I guess I do,
Mm.
yeah, feel as a misfit, but I think I used to feel it less in the past. And then I was kind of thinking like, why? Now I don't really feel like a misfit. And I think it's because in order to feel like a misfit, you kind of want to fit.
Yeah.
Like you kind of need to have the wish to fit in.
Yeah.
And I think mostly in the last couple of years, I'm kind of just, yeah, I hope it's okay with the language. Like I just don't give an F anymore.
Use what language you want. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, like I think you need to kind of give it them and want to fit in order to feel like a misfit.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, it's the same with the definitions. I don't really bother anymore.
That's
Like after a
yeah.
while, you just, I'm different and that's just the way it is. Yeah, I don't try so much. I don't try so hard anymore. But I know that when I was a teenage, for example, that was like a very strong kind of feeling, of not fitting in, of wanting to fit in,
Mm-hmm.
understanding why I don't kind of do what everybody wants to.
And
I,
and I want to pick up on that journey because I think in a minute, because I think that's really useful for people listening in, hearing other people's stories of how they went through that journey of, feeling that pain of being a misfit because they wanted to belong, and then how they came to that point of just like, do you know what? I do belong, but on my
yeah,
own terms. But first of all, I would, excuse me, because this show is all about celebrating uniqueness and diversity. That's the big thing. It's like, what do you love about some of those terms, some of the things that make you that unique, like HSP or whatever? What is it that you really enjoy about those?
yeah, I think it comes with a lot of privileges. Like it changes all the time, but I think what I really noticed lately, yeah, because I had I see a lot of suffering also in my own life and also for my work, also as a yoga teacher, but I also work in some kind of a social organization. In my family, there is suffering everywhere, basically. And I feel that what I really enjoy right now in my life is this kind of sense of refuge. I kind of plan to write about it also in my blog. I didn't get to it yet. But this kind of sense of, I have my refuge in my yoga, in my meditation when I have problems. I have this place in myself and also like the physical place, the center where I meditate, for example, where I can really go and take refuge in. And I see it as a huge privilege because it's something that a lot of people with kind of falling apart of spirituality in the West and all these kind of things, they really lost it. They really don't have it, not in themselves and not, any other way. And when I see people that they go through very, very hard difficulties and they take refuge in things that even doesn't really bring them any kind of happiness or stability or any kind of access to themselves. So I think this is for me something that I'm really very thankful for, that I've done this journey and I'm now in a place where, yeah, when I can genuinely say that I take refuge in my practice.
So is part of that you value that your sensitivities and kind of your unique energy system, nervous system, however you want to say it, kind of led you to go on this journey of discovering how to take care of yourself, and so the gratitude
Definitely.
is for that part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So in that journey, it's kind of it almost sounds like an awakening to your soul self, awakening to yourself that you went through, where you journeyed through feeling like a misfit and you wanted to belong and coming out
Mhm.
on the other side. Can you just say as much as you want, it's whatever you're comfortable with, but can you share a bit of that about what helped you, what didn't help you, what you would do differently, or
Yeah, what I do differently, I try not to think about too much.
okay.
But yeah, there is a lot of things that I would do differently, definitely. But yeah, I don't dwell in it too much. I think that what helped me maybe would be the better, yeah, like something that I think about it more. What really helped me is this kind of going after what really interests me. Because I had a time, I have few periods actually of very, very big darkness,
Yeah.
you can say.
Yeah.
Like it started, maybe I can tell it a bit chronologically.
Yeah,
Like it
please.
started already when I was in high school. Towards the end of the high school, it became not so good. Then in Israel, you have to go to the military service.
Wow.
And yeah, I didn't done anything that has anything to do with military service. I was already then doing a lot of like work with kids and with youth and like community work. It was pretty great,
Hmm.
but still it was still pretty strict kind of lifestyle that I didn't have before.
For sure.
And of course, it didn't help at all. And then I was traveling around the world, and I was in New Zealand and came back too early. And, yeah, and that was like the really first very heavy time.
Hmm.
And I was very lucky that already when I was 18, I went with my bigger sister to India. And I got to know yoga. Like I was practicing a little bit of Tai Chi before, but there I really got into yoga. And then even through the military service, I was trying to practice a little bit.
Mm.
And when I left, it was one of the first things that I've done. And it really helped me. And then, as I said, like this kind of sense of taking refuge. Like when I got out of this really dark time, I kind of intuitively know that this is something I need to research more.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is something that really helped me in the past, and I want to go deeper into
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
And yeah, and through that, I kind of found myself in India again. And I very first got into a course about Tibetan Buddhism, which I still practice till today. I've done my first yoga teacher training, and yeah, from there on, I still had hard times, but it was always like my center, you
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was really, yeah, that definitely the biggest thing that helped me.
So it sounds like yoga was almost like a calling for you. That and Buddhism is, Buddhism and yoga was kind of your calling home.
Yeah, definitely, and it still is. Till today, it's a journey that I hope not to finish soon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I know when I had a
definitely.
look at your website and your bio, some of the journeys that you've been on sound absolutely fascinating, and it's always really exotic
Yeah.
to think of like people traveling and
Mm.
experiencing different cultures and how that kind of impacts you. And I suppose, like, thinking about it from your perspective, not only is like you've got this calling that tells you that you need to wake up to something internal, but you've also been exposed to all these different cultures that gives you a really wider perspective
Mm.
on priorities and what's important. And could you share a bit about what you've mentioned something about Western spirituality falling apart, and kind of what that big perspective and that wider perspective helped you kind of wake up and reprioritize things, and what became a
Mm.
priority?
Yeah, like I come originally from Israel, so my family was not religious in any kind of way.
Yeah.
And mostly like my mother's side, they were not religious at all. And my father's side are maybe like a bit traditional or something like that, but I didn't have a lot of Jewish tradition at home, like the basics of the basics. Um, so this is kind of what I grew up with, but from a very young age, I kind of have doubts of what I learned at school and, things like that. And of course, when I came to yoga and mostly to Buddhism, you kind of need to reconfront with that. And as you said, like living in India in and of itself was a really eye opener, especially, with 18. Like I was really young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's maybe even too young. Um, yeah, so I experienced that when I was 18, and then I lived there for long periods of time. And yeah, like you said, it just gives you different perspectives also about life, generally speaking, but about religion. And interestingly enough, now I live already almost 5 years. Like soon I'm celebrating my 5 year anniversary. I'm living in Berlin, in Germany, which is a Christian country originally, but Berlin is on the other way, also very, very, yeah, multicultural. And the neighborhood where I live, there is a lot of Muslims, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you cannot get more multicultural than that, I guess. Yeah, and it really opens your mind. Like you cannot say that anything is, right or wrong, because I've seen very happy people and I've seen very sad people practicing all religious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that for me it was the most interesting thing that people who are genuinely practicing, it really doesn't matter what kind of religion or tradition they're practicing, if it's Judaism or Kabbalah or Hinduism or Zen Buddhism or Tibetan Buddhism or whatever, as long as somebody is genuinely on a spiritual path, is genuinely trying to practice some kind of a tradition and also stays for a while. Like I think that's also the thing in the West, that because we have so much options, we tend to know every half a year change tradition.
Okay, yeah.
And that's I don't highly recommend that, let's say it like that. But I think that if you generally practice and if you stay for long enough in the same tradition, at least more or less, then I definitely see that these people are more in peace and they have more tools and again, this refuge that they can go to. And it really doesn't matter what kind of tradition you practice as long as you just practice and genuinely practice.
So it sounds like that commitment can give you stability, like, and a deepening of an understanding is kind of what you're saying. And
Definitely.
when you say the word practice and spiritual practice, I know that means so many different things for different
Mm.
people in terms of like, do you have a practice? What is your practice? And so what is your practice? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis for you?
My personal practice.
Mm.
That's a very personal question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So
No,
you
that's
don't have to
okay.
answer it.
I'm glad to answer it. I just thought about one of my teachers. Also, people ask her that a lot, like, what is your daily practice? Because she's a big meditation teacher. And she always says, like, it's like you asked me, what do I do in bed? It's such an intimate question. And she's a nun. Yeah. Yeah, but she was not always a nun.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, like basically it's kind of in a transformation phase right now, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But right now I try to stick to like at least 10 minutes in the morning when I just do like very silent meditation as much as I can be silent in
Yeah.
the morning.
Yeah.
Um, and also stretch and move a bit just to kind of reconnect with my body again and
Mm.
do, prayer or two, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I do in the morning. I also teach every day, so that's also for me some kind of a practice.
Mm.
I teach like 4 or 5 times a week, so it's also pretty intense practice in and
Yeah.
of itself.
Yeah.
When I try in the evenings to sit again and do some kind of a meditation. Like I don't do so much asanas anymore, like sometimes in the weekend if I have time and if I feel like it. But because I teach asanas and I have so much movement in my life anyway, so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of really appreciate just silent meditation.
Mm.
It's something that I started to do not so long ago, actually.
Mm-hmm.
When I just started, for example, it was more than 8 years ago. So I couldn't do silent meditation at all. I would go crazy. I did went crazy. Like really, I really tried. Everybody said it's so wonderful, but it was just impossible.
I'm so
So I've
with you
done
on
like
that.
different kinds of meditations that are less silence, like with mantra and visualization. In Tibetan Buddhism, you have like really amazing stuff that you can do that are much more active for
Yeah.
the mind. And at the
Yeah.
time, it was great for me. And I've done a lot of asanas practice and the dynamic and flows and things like that. But with the time, as I'm getting older, it's not really the word, but I don't know, somehow with the time it developed like that, that yeah, I'm appreciating silence more and more.
I think you've just made a few really good points there. The first one is that whole idea of principle of silent meditation and, you know, connecting to the body, and it can be too much to begin with. It can actually work against us because that's
Yeah.
not where we need to be. So,
Mm.
you know, that whole, anybody who's listening who's found that not working for them, you have permission to find something else that, you know, feels
Yeah,
a bit
definitely.
easier. Yeah.
You can give me a call, I can give you all of the other options that you have. I always say, like, when you start, not when you start, actually, always, you have to be really forgiving with yourself and really,
Yeah.
you know, really realistic. You know, like you need to start very small with something that you feel comfortable. And also for me, it
Mm,
took time and I felt, until I found this specific mantra practice that I said, okay, this is something I actually want to do every day.
yeah. Yeah.
It's very small and it took time until I really started, but, just start.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter like how small you start and, you just know why you're doing it and just do it.
Yeah, and so the other thing for people listening
Yes.
as well is sometimes the whole idea of having a spiritual practice, and especially on a daily basis, it feels huge, like this huge thing you've got to do. And it's like, you know,
Mm,
you're the same as me. My spiritual practice is like taking just that time in the morning,
mm,
10 minutes to just really center. And then the other thing that I really like, so first of all, there's that whole concept of it doesn't have to be huge for it to have impact. And like you say, start small anyway, but also then your work can become your spiritual practice, you know. So I feel like that when I'm channeling for clients and when I'm working with clients, that because I go into that space and I go into that wider space, which I'm thinking that you do as a yoga teacher, that also feels like it recharges me, it reconnects me to my center. And I think when we're doing work or activities that are not just joyful to us, but meaningful, and they engage us, and we have to be really present. That in itself is a practice because it is just about being present and with you, connected to yourself.
yeah, definitely. And I know from experience because I lived for a while in a meditation center and I work most of my life in things that have to do either with yoga and meditation, but also for very long I worked, in all kind of social organizations and um, yeah, with people with special needs. And there is a lot of people that are on the spiritual path
Mm-hmm.
and they see their work as part of their practice. And I think it's the most noble thing actually to do because there is a limit of how much you can sit. And what actually, for me at least, as I said, like I can say from experience, I know people that sits really a lot, but when it comes to conflicts at their jobs or in their relationships, or you can see it the most, I think, in romantic relationships. This is where, the shit really hits the fan, kind of.
Yeah,
Then you can
absolutely.
see how much inner peace that people have. If
Yeah,
you
I've been
think you're
there.
excited, go to your family for 1 week, or, there is this saying. So when it comes to their families or to their romantic relationships, when things starts to fall apart, they just freak out totally.
Mm-hmm.
So they do sit 4 hours a day in meditation.
Right.
So it's not always, one to one. And I had to learn this also the hard way, that sometimes short and frequent has much more impact than just very, very long and, doing 4 months of retreat and then going out and not being in peace with the world at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I had
yeah.
an experience a lot of years ago now, and I went on a spiritual retreat to a Buddhist center for a week, and a lot
Mm,
of that was silent, which drove me crazy. It wasn't a silent meditation, but we were just on our own a lot on the evening, and I really loved just the way that I paid my way when I stayed there was I had to just do the work. So I cleaned the rooms, I helped with the cooking and all, and that's how I kind of got the teachings as well. So I got accesses to the class, and it was just so divine to not think of anything
Mm.
but basic needs and just doing what somebody else said. And I felt so blissful. But then as soon as I came home, everything that I'd kind of gone away from was still there. And I'm just like, oh, no. Everything's just come back and might as well not really gone away. So it's got to be something that is like helps with integration. And it sounds like,
Mm.
that's where you've really felt like you've learned to belong on your own terms, because you've integrated things into your life in a way that really supports you and works for you. So,
Yeah, I've done also, I'm sorry if I
no, carry
cut
on.
you in
It's
the
all
middle.
right.
I've done also like many retreats, and I think retreats have their power.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They have their meaning, because it is like in time of intensive practice.
Mm.
But of course, the problems that you had before the retreats will not disappear. And as somebody is also moved quite a lot, like even when I was in Israel, I moved between cities many times. Yeah, like it doesn't matter. You can move to the other side of the planet. Your problems comes with you.
Yeah.
And this is something I
True.
also
Yeah.
have to say I learned the hard way. Like you always think, I just moved to this other city and everything would be great. I just skip town or, I just go back to India, and India was everything marvelous all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth of the matter is that your problems come with you wherever you go.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how many times you will move. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of
But
the things that you mentioned, and I know that I wanted to bring up on the podcast as well, is that you were part of your yoga teacher training was working with people with, I think it says on your website, specific needs, or I might have read that wrong. Is it special needs? But I know
special needs is
special.
usually the term that I use.
Okay. So so what does that actually mean in terms of like in the yoga teaching, how it's different and how that shows up? Can you just say a bit more about it?
Yeah, gladly. Yeah, it came at a time when I was kind of searching more like my style as a yoga teacher.
Mm.
And then actually through a coaching, a very good coach, I kind of managed to combine like a lot of the work that I've done before, because as I said, I work in social organizations for people with special needs. I work at a home for kids with autism for relatively long. Um, So I just kind of combined these two things, like this experience that I had with people with special needs. I worked mostly with people that have like mental disabilities,
Mm-hmm.
although my training was for people also with physical disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And also some of the courses I still give now, they're kind of like mixed courses. Like in Berlin, it's very trendy now, kind of like integration. Like you don't want to do just for people with disabilities and kind of close them in the course. And, you want to integrate them in the normal schools and in the normal classes.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we are trying to do. And I'm a part of this project, and it's really fascinating. Um, yeah, I don't see it as very differently. Like I just give more options.
So
I just
how does that
learn more
show up?
options.
Like
Yeah,
how
like I give more, like in yoga when you do the poses, so you have more, yeah, so I give like alternative poses. Like I had, for example, not so long ago, a student that she told me, I have few students like that until now. She told me like, I can go to sit on the mat, but I'm not sure I will get up, you know? So yeah, so you kind of need to change all the poses to sitting poses on the chair.
Okay, yeah.
And that's like example of how it shows up. Generally speaking, my teaching style, generally speaking, it's very relaxed, very in your own time. Like I try to give people time, and I try to encourage them to connect with their own body and find their own rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Do much of like physical corrections.
Mm-hmm.
I do verbal corrections most of the time
Okay.
to give people their space. Like a lot of people that for me as a student was always very hard, that I have to keep up with the tempo, that sometimes in some yoga classes it's really,
Yeah.
powerful. I know that many people, especially people with disabilities, they don't like to be touched.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, for example, something that I change a bit. Yeah, but it's just like the general atmosphere that everybody is welcomed and everybody can find their own way to do yoga, and I just kind of help you to do that.
That's
Yeah.
gorgeous. Because I know so there's like with the, specifically autistic spectrum, obviously that's where my understanding and awareness is from my own experience, but also from my children as well. The we're all on there somewhere. And I know for them to be able to sit still for a period of time, or to be that slow can be quite overwhelming because the stimulation from the nervous system and the information that comes up and that sensory kind of overload. So it would be too much, so because they have to work. Like sometimes, I don't know if this comes up in your class, but it's not so much that they need slower, it's they need firmer, so that real, we call them
Mm.
sensory squeezes at home, so you just get like
Yeah,
this really tight hug,
yeah.
which kind of is the opposite of a lot of my experience in yoga, which,
Mm.
is quite stimulating.
Yeah, I worked a little bit with yoga with kids. Actually, I work more with adults,
Yeah,
so it's a bit
same.
different.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I felt like there they just kind of need, yeah, like in the course that I had, it's just more like they just need me to talk with them in the same level and see what we can do together. Like that was more kind of my experience because they really appreciated that I just came and I had my yoga and how it's supposed to look like. But very early, I was very lucky that one of my first classes was a class with very old ladies. And that was also a good example for like special needs,
yeah,
different needs.
yeah.
And yeah, and I needed to learn very fast, to just not work with what I think this should look like or what I want to do or what I had in mind for the class. Just work with the people as they are at that day. And when I worked with, like I had a class for a year or so, like in an apartment, like I don't know how you say it in English now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's kind of like they are safe there and they have like they have their work and they have their apartment and they always have somebody there that kind of take care of them. And they were all people with mental disabilities, different kind of mental disabilities. And there it was also every week you need to come as if it's a new class. And you need to just be open and patient and everything that you already taught them, you need to teach again. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience, definitely.
It
Yeah.
makes me feel so warm inside hearing like that approach, because that's what I'm like passionate about, is if our society could kind of just work with individual people's uniquenesses and let that grow and flow and flourish, instead of getting us all to kind of conform into one way of doing, then
Mm.
we'd learn so much and we would grow so much. And it's just so wonderful and liberating to hear that that's what your yoga practice is like, or your teaching. When you go somewhere, you work with the room as much as possible. And do
Mm.
you see people kind of like opening up to themselves in a way that they didn't know they could, or if anything happened like that when they've worked with their own kind of unique rhythm and everything?
Yeah, it's somehow sometimes hard to know. Like I don't always know what
Yeah,
happens,
for sure.
during the
Yeah.
class. But yeah, I had a lot of people that kind of started very, very skeptical,
Yeah.
especially, for example, this course, also the old lady course. But generally speaking, in all of my classes, like you always have the few skepticals, I call it, like you have it in every class.
They keep us on his toes, really.
Yeah, like yeah, like it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable in a way.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's also very interesting to see that this is the people that sometimes comes the most regularly. And it's kind of open, kind of curiosity, because, if you just accept that, they are allowed to be skeptical. And as I said, I'm used to being a misfit. I'm used to being, like an alien. I'm also coming from Israel. I teach in German and I have a very thick accent, even in English, as you can hear. So in German, it's not better at all, not even worse. So yeah, in all of these years when I lived in India and, I tell them I'm doing yoga for 12 years, it's kind of an alien to them, and I can understand that, and I accept it, and
Mm.
I let them see for themselves. And yeah, it's interesting to see that this is sometimes really the people that come the most regularly and are the most curious and
Mm.
kind of open up with the time to, some of the possibilities. Yeah.
So, because of your own journey, and it sounds like you've worked, you've dug deep and you've really done the work on yourself, you're able to offer a real kind of accepting, compassionate field, from that empathy point of view, because you've done your stuff, you know what it's like, and you kind of knew that you needed something different. So it becomes kind of like your second nature to offer that to somebody else.
Yeah, definitely.
So I know that you are got an online presence as well. You don't just teach in real life. I mean, that's where we met, is an online group. So what can people? How can people work with you? What is it that, if they're interested in learning more, what can they do about that?
Yeah, so first of all, you can just go to my website, freedomyoga.info, and there you can also get a free ebook if you want to start to practice more regularly. So I really kind of put all of my ideas about how you can do that. And
Is that for the yoga or for the Buddhism? Is the book, is that for yoga
it's
or?
for both. Like I generally
Ooh,
speaking try to kind of call it like spiritual practice or
yeah,
yeah, but I think that also like if you do yoga, it includes meditation in my
yeah,
book at least.
yeah.
So yeah, so it can work for you also if you just want to do meditation practice, but definitely also for yoga. And it's also the ebook itself. It's a bit philosophical.
Mm,
A few days after you get like an email with a bit more like practical stuff.
mm-hmm.
Um, so that's the first thing that you can do. You can follow my blog. You have a lot of things there. I just released a new blog post today, for example. Um, yeah, and also there I give a lot of guidance. If you want to work with me like on a deeper level, so I give like one-on-one kind of coaching.
Yeah.
Because I know for a lot of people, as you said, it's really hard to know. There is like such a huge supermarket of practice
Mm,
today, and it's so hard to start because there is so many distractions.
yeah.
So I give like coaching just to start practicing regularly. Like I work with the person again. Like I come totally empty-handed. I just see what the person brings, and then I see what would be the best practice for them. And then we also discuss it, like if you really think it's the best fit for you, and how can you start, how many times a day. And then I also follow up. Like it's not just one meeting. It's usually at least 3 meetings, but like 3 to 6 meetings, something like that. And yeah, and I just kind of do this journey with you just to get you started on your own practice.
I
Just,
saw, yeah, sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you, but I saw that and I thought it was a really wonderful idea for working really specifically on people's unique like needs in that moment, and then teaching them how they can support themselves in that practice for a period of time, and then they've got it, and then they can be off, and then they can come back if they need something different, and they can be off. But
Yeah.
actually that's quite, I've not come across that before, where you can work one to one and just develop that kind of in-depth practice. It
Yeah,
sounds
and
really
it's
cool.
something that just came out naturally for me when I was doing my classes.
Yeah,
And generally speaking, my website, it's kind of like if you want more than just a weekly class.
yeah,
So that is the idea
yeah.
because I feel the weekly class is just 1.5 hours, as I said. I don't know what happens with most of the people after that, to be honest.
Hmm.
And I also had the need, and I think that I also can give much more than just that. This is why I started this website. And then it came naturally to me that I said, okay, like some people want to practice at home. And I have a lot of tools and I had my own struggles, to actually keep it regularly.
Yeah.
So I can really help them with that. Another thing that I do, like right now it's closed to registration, but I
Yeah.
hope to relaunch it soon. It's more like an online course.
Hmm.
Like also there, I try to give as much as personal attention as I can, but it's more kind of like self-learning, and it's also called Become Your Own Teacher. So
I
it's really
love
like
that.
it's kind of again taking it to the next level. I know a lot of people, also people in my classes, for example, that they've gone to classes for like a while, and they want to take it further. They want to understand more. They maybe even want to do yoga teacher training, but they don't feel ready yet, or
Yeah.
it's very expensive and very time costing, let's be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to offer in this online course some kind of an alternative to that you can go deeper, you can understand more, you can get all of the secrets of a yoga teacher, and even some stuff that I know some yoga teachers that didn't learn it in their training, and
Right.
some
Uh-huh.
stuff that I also didn't learn in my training that I learned from my own practice. Um, so this is why I teach there. Like I really start with the very basic, the basic philosophy of yoga and how you can integrate it in your life. Really the basic guidelines that the wisdom of yoga gives us that I found for myself. It's the best thing to start with. Especially people, like we talked about it a bit before, if you are really in a very hard time, sometimes doing a meditation practice or yoga practice is not very good. And I know that for me also, there were times when I felt that, I'm not equipped for that right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, I just kind of try to practice, the moral conduct part. I just try not to lie that much. I just try, I stopped drinking, for example. And that was my practice. I couldn't done any other practice,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
such a
That's
mess.
huge. Uh-huh.
And I think that's really gave me also a really, really good kind of ground, really good infrastructure.
Mm.
That then when I wanted to do more, it was much easier.
Yeah.
So this is why it was also so, although it's not very sexy, the moral conduct part of yoga, I find it really important. And it's kind of like the first mission, the first part of the
Mm-hmm.
course. And then we move to yoga asanas, like the body poses and breathing exercises. And then on top, like the cherry on top, I do a whole course about meditation. And yeah, and that's, as I said, it's really, yeah, it's a big project. I'm working on it for a few years already now.
Yeah, it sounds it. It's,
Because
yeah.
I really think it's missing,
Uh-huh.
like cannot just focus on going to a weekly class, doing these really beautiful poses, feeling really chilled and relaxed. And yeah, and then you go home and it's such a small part of what you can get from yoga.
Yeah. Yeah, so
And
it sounds like that moral code is more about choosing things that you want to be integrity about, your own integrity. And that's such a, like, we can develop that real sense of like good pride from,
mm,
and then build on those successes. And it can help us, um, it can help us navigate those voices of shame that can still come up as well. So
mm,
especially when you first start, or you've got a lot that's going on and there's a lot that you want to change in your life, it sounds like that. I can imagine that kind of moral, that I probably would call integrity, is like a really core, strong guiding principle for a person.
yeah, and I see generally speaking, as I said, I'm in the scene of yoga for quite a while, and I see a lot of people that their practice is just very shallow. It's a
Yeah.
bit judgmental to say it, like I feel a bit judgmental saying it,
Yeah.
but you see it when really things, like for me, as I said, always like the test of your spiritual practice, it's when things fall apart,
Yeah.
when things are not happening as you wanted to.
Yeah.
And then you see that the practice is not strong enough. Like it doesn't have the strong foundations. They don't understand why they are doing. Um, they don't know how to do it themselves. They are very dependent on the teacher. When you just go to weekly classes, you're always very dependent on the teacher. You
Mm.
don't understand why you are doing these practices. What is the point behind them? Like I know that I try to explain,
Mm-hmm.
and some people, I know that other teachers as well, but it's not the same as really doing a course just studying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you take just very shallow kind of, and it's very available, this kind of very shallow yoga world, it's very available everywhere. But if you stay always only there, it doesn't give you, as I said, it just doesn't give you the foundation that you really need.
And I can tell from the way that that was your calling, that's what got you through, and that your passion is that you want to see that other people can be their own support and their own teachers and use it in that way as well. So that kind of
Yeah.
comes, I can really see that.
definitely.
Well, thank you for being on the show. I will put your website and the ebook link in the show notes, and
Yeah,
we'll have to get you back on when you are open for registration and you can tell us more about it, because I've got questions about Tibetan Buddhism, but that is going to take us too long. And so yeah, for now, thank you, and
yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
okay, see you soon. Bye.
Bye bye.